You think you can just ruin my masterpiece? I'll cut you into pieces! You've been looking for me? You must need some new clothes. Well, you came to the right person. I can make anyone look like a model.
Okay, that cat's amazing. I don't even care what she does. 100% must pull. Hey everyone, it's Mace1370, and today we're going to talk about the new upcoming ML5 Designer Lilibet. Before we get into it though, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Also, please check the video description below for a link to my Discord. So Designer Lilibet, new ML5, she's a Dark Warrior with a Cancer star sign, which means she has the same stats as Alencia does. And a little different though, that her imprint concentration is crit chance, which is extremely strong. Her imprint release is HP %. I believe Alencia's imprint concentration is HP %. So Designer Lilibet will be a little bit easier to build in the crit chance department than Alencia if you have the imprints. We know that we can build Alencia thick, and that will be the same with Designer Lilibet. We'll see when we look at her skills in a second here that she is a kind of anti-debuff warrior who also scales off of defense. So while Alencia scales off of HP, Designer Lilibet scales off of defense. So I think that it'll be fairly easy to build her. We can look at a few different ways that might be done, whether that's on counter set or if it's on speed set. But overall, I think that her base stats will allow you to put together a variety of different builds. So you can see her skill 2 here. Emergency Stitching is a passive skill. It's based around Fighting Spirit, so that'll be the resource that she uses. She starts the battle at base with 30 Fighting Spirit, but you can see here when you fully mullet it, it'll be 50 Fighting Spirit. So that'll be halfway full. When her Fighting Spirit is full at the end of somebody's turn, it consumes all of it, and it dispels all debuffs from the caster, and increases her combat readiness by 40%. So this does quite a bit. So you need 100 Fighting Spirit, I believe, to trigger this passive, and she starts with 50. So that means that 10 debuffs will trigger it right off the bat at the end of somebody's turn. So if a hero, like any of the big debuffers like Tea-Time Tenebria, puts 2 debuffs on everyone on your team, and then her turn ends, you won't have 100 Fighting Spirit yet. You'll need another turn. So an alternative scenario would be somebody puts a couple debuffs on someone on your team, and then their turn ends, and then Tea-Time Tenny goes and fully debuffs your team. Then that'll trigger her. So I think that it'll oftentimes take more than just one enemy going at the start of the fight before her skill 2 will kick in, which I think can be advantageous if they have a few debuff openers, like if they have Cerise and Tea-Time Tenebria. If they only have one, then they might be able to get off some of their combo before Designer Lilibet fires, which could be okay, because the scariest thing with Tea-Time Tenebria is her defense break, which comes after one of your heroes takes a turn, and presumably Designer Lilibet will be able to cut all of that no matter what. So the 40% CR increase also is huge. If you look at the CR bar for a debuffer at like 290 speed or so, you're only going to need like 170-ish odd speed on her to cut to the front of the line. That's how big 40% CR boost is. So I think that you're going to have options in terms of how you speed tune her, whether you want to run her all the way down around like 160 to 175 or so, or if you want to speed her up even more so that she turn cycles quickly. I think you'll have options. Okay, Model Disqualification is her third skill, so this is presumably what you're using after your passive triggers and you cut to the front of the line. It decreases debuff duration of all allies by 2 turns, and it gets an AoE attack that scales off of defense and also increases their skill cooldown by 1 turn, so the enemy skill cooldown by 1 turn. And then you get 50 Fighting Spirit, so that means that she's going to be even more likely to trigger her passive on successive turns if like more debuffs come in. That's actually really nice. I didn't notice that additional 50 Fighting Spirit. She's really going to trigger that passive quite a bit if they continue to debuff you. So that's pretty cool. You can Mola this and add some damage and then decrease the skill cooldown to 5 turns, or sorry, from 5 turns to 4 turns. So the thing that's a little awkward about this skill is the increasing their skill cooldown by 1 turn. That might affect you later on in the battle, but early, if you get debuffed and then she cuts to the front of the line, I think a lot of the enemy damage dealers, if they're on immunity, they'll still have immunity. so they won't really be able to take advantage. You won't be able to take advantage of that if they're on immunity. Maybe, you know, a lot of people run like Arby, for example, off immunity, so heroes like that will have their skill cooldown increase, and that could be pretty huge. If she cuts to the front of the line after tea time goes, and then before Arby goes, or someone like that, maybe a ranger under Guiding Light who's not on immunity, she's able to increase their skill cooldowns by a turn and just totally negate their skill 3s. That could be super strong. So that's a really nice benefit right there. So overall, I think this is a really strong skill 3, and it could fit quite well in the meta right now. Her skill 1 is Slice to Pieces. This acquires 25 fighting spirit. It's a single target attack, and at baseline it's a 65% chance to silence for a turn, and then you can mull that up to 75%, and then you can soul burn it for 100%, and it's a 10 soul burn cost for the soul burn. So this is pretty decent. You know, silence is a strong debuff. You can sometimes, you know, use it at a really good time to completely shut down a unit for a turn, you know, that has a powerful skill 3 and they don't do much on their skill 1. If you silence them, then you can really prevent a lot of incoming damage. I think in the video that they previewed Designer Lilibet in, she was on counter set because you see her counter when the enemy debuffs her. I don't know if it's going to be worth running her on counter to get, you know, the chance for a cheeky silence where she, you know, jumps in and silences someone. There obviously is value to it. You know, the units that you see run on counter are things like Dizzy with a potential AoE stun on the counter as a benefit, Ravi, who can heal herself, can stun the enemy team, and also with her EE can cleanse herself. And those are the two units that you oftentimes see on counter, like maybe Meru, who can seal on counter, but her whole kit revolves around getting as many seals out as possible, so I think she's a little bit different. I don't know if just having a silence on skill 1 is really enough to justify it, but that said, it could be pretty strong. Like, for example, if Cerise AoEs your team, and then you counter Cerise and hit her and silence her, and that prevents her from skill 2ing on, you know, the lap around. It's, you know, something, but I'm not quite sure if it'll be justified, enough benefit to justify counter set. Okay, so we can take a look at Alencia here to see how we might build Designer Lilibet. I'm probably going to run her on Draco Plate. I think it's likely the best option because it'll help her be a little tanky, and it will give her more crit damage. Other options I thought about using, you could consider these prayer beads as kind of a meme. They do give her defense buff at the end of a turn, or they have a chance to, and defense buff on her would be super strong. We'll see in a minute when we consider her damage, but defense buff is really nice. You know, Fighter Maya gives herself defense buff, and she scales off defense, and it's super impactful. So I think these prayer beads might be an option. The problem is they give it to you at the end of the turn, so she's not going to really have it on her skill 3, which I think that means that these really won't be an option, unfortunately, but it was something to think about. You could always run her on this, the Alexinox's Wrath. It could, you know, scale up and allow you to cheat stats otherwise, but especially in the new meta, I feel like this artifact got a lot worse because fights end so quickly now. It's hard for this artifact to scale up. Champion's Trophy, kind of a meme, you know, it only works on skill 1s and she doesn't have AoE skill 1, so pretty irrelevant there. You could think about Creation and Destruction. Warrior artifacts are so bad, by the way. Crypto agrees if you heard that bark in the background. So this could prevent her skill cooldown from occurring, so her skill 3 is like super impactful, and if this triggers, I guess she could use her skill 3 again, which would be pretty sweet. You could think about Durandal on her to help push her up to the front again. I think this could actually be a reasonable option as well, especially if you have her on, you know, like a slower build, like a counter set build. Let's see. Do we have any other warrior artifacts? I mean, Sacred Scythe, of course, would be an option, but this is an artifact I kind of like to put on people that scale with attack rather than, you know, defense or health. So I think that's kind of your option. Same with Liberius Tooth. So I think Durandal is a good option. I think that Draco Plate is a good option. Maybe Creation and Destruction. I think that those are kind of what you're looking at. So let's go ahead and open up the build thing here. Let's see what we can do with counter set first, just to see what that would look like. I don't have a ton of counter gear, so this should be pretty quick. That's an option, I think. No, that wasn't the one I wanted. Was it this one? Yeah, this has some defense and crit chance. So because her awakenings are crit chance, we can potentially get away a little bit with cheating, you know, some stats on her. Let's see, that could be okay. We don't have a ton of defense rings, so just going to have to make do with this one. And then we don't really need to worry about immunity on her because of, you know, her passive that cleanses herself, which is pretty nice. So potentially, I mean, we could just steal Fighter Maya's neck here as an example. And then let's see what we do for defense here. So this is an option. This is also an option. This has attack. This has a lot of crit chance. This has, let's see, some crit chance. What does this one look like? So that's overcapped. This is also, so we have a lot of crit chance here, so it could probably do a little bit better. What is this? This has some defense and attack and crit damage. Kind of don't need the attack. So I don't really have a great pair of boots for her, I guess. Oh, this one's okay. It doesn't have a ton of defense, though. Fighter Maya's boots are defense main. She's definitely overcapped on crit chance there. Alright, well, we could run this one, and, like, let's say, for example, you're going to get, you know, a single imprint or something, or maybe 2 imprints to bump her up, and tap her out this way. So this is, I think, around what you'd be looking at for counter set. She's actually quite speedy right now. Let's see, where's all the speed? Oh, it's probably coming from, yeah, this neck has some speed also. Plenty of speed here, and this ring has a good amount of speed. Could we get away with defense main boots on her? Or is that going to be too slow? Yeah, that's like too slow. She's not going to cut at this speed, because I think you want like at least 170 speed for her to cut after all the debuffs happen. So that's pretty important. Yeah, I think that, well, I guess if you're going after their debuffers, you just need to cut their DPS. I think she would probably cut their DPS. I don't know. I think we'll have to see. She also like would just never turn cycle at this slow speed either. So I think you want speed boots on her. And we want defense. So something like this, or like this one. The attack is kind of wasted. This is okay too. I think when I looked in the damage calculator for around 2k defense and around 250 crit damage on a plus 15 Draco plate, you're looking at about 5.5k on her S3 and around 4.5 to 5k on her S1. So her damage is not out of this world, but it's okay. I think that the advantage of her is that you're going to be able to draft her in a team as a damage source, and then you'll also be able to take a cleanser. And so that means that whether they ban her or your cleanser, you're still going to have a nice balance of support, damage, sustain, etc. The awkward thing right now is we don't, other than Kitty Clarissa, we don't really have any non-Soul Weaver options to get rid of these debuffs. Like Lilius is there, I guess, but they're all kind of lackluster. So I think Lilibet will be nice and we'll fill that in. So we can look at speed set now. Oh, and then, you know, just a note. So that was around 5.5k damage on S3. If you put defense buff on her with those stats, I think it goes up to like 7,500. So that is a huge increase if you can swing that. So I think running her with a defense buffer is going to be very important. So we can look at like health and crit damage here maybe. Can we just give her Fighter Maya's gear and see what that looks like? I guess Fighter Maya is like super slow. Does this have a lot of defense? It has like some stuff. Let's see. Probably want defense here. Here's Fighter Maya's. Okay, that has some solid defense on it. And then we can give her Fighter Maya's neck again. And then probably Fighter Maya's ring. And then I guess we'll have to give her that crappy... Oh, I guess she's on speed set, so we could consider using just these boots. So if you run her on speed set, she'd still like turn cycle slowly, but she's gonna have a lot more crit here. I think she's probably overcapped. And then she, especially with imprint, she definitely will be. So you could drop the crit and get maybe either even more speed or more defense. So she'll be hitting a lot harder here with this extra crit damage. So this is an option as well. You could also run her on speed boot to help her turn cycling. Like just this one. Wow, her defense. Oh, I guess it really went down because she was on defense main boot there with that Fighter Maya boot. But still, I mean, like, so close to 2k defense, way too fast. I can probably cut some speed down to get more. So the advantage of, like, the speed build here is basically you're just going to run her around 200 speed, I guess, and have similar stats to that counter set build, as opposed to running her at, like, 165 or 175 or so. And then she'll probably do a little bit more damage. This is probably how most people are going to run her, because most people, you know, don't farm Banshee a lot. Kind of like plus minus on which of those will be good. I'll test both and we'll see. But that's just kind of what I threw on and what I was playing around with. Curious if you guys have thoughts on how you're going to build her, like especially what speed you're going to run her at. I think it'll be hard to get like the 2.4k defense that you see with Fighter Maya, because Fighter Maya is able to cheat on speed and just totally ignore it, or almost totally ignore it, because she can be run on Elbrus. So go ahead and post in the comments below how you'll build her. I'm curious to see it, and otherwise that's it. Later.